Well, hello and welcome to the channel. I'm glad you could join me. My name's Johnny, and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling. And we are working on our M113 Armored Personnel Carrier by Tamiya. And this is going to be part 5. Part 5. And I did finally remember what that was that I forgot to do last time. So we'll go ahead and take care of that first, and then we're going to get straight into painting and see how much of that we can get done in this video. So let's jump down to the bench and get to work. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and disassemble the model. You need to remove that top, and we just press the commander's seat forward, and there we go. So the problem here, and we're going to have to fix this, is this double latch assembly that has the it's actually a chain that has a vinyl cover on it. It's on the wrong end. It's on the same end that they molded the hinges into the top hatch there. It's supposed to be on the other end. So we're gonna have to move that from there to there, and we'll just have to do a little bit of scratch building to get that over there. So let's go ahead and take care of that. So my hands would have been in the way, you wouldn't have been able to see what I was doing, but here's what I've done. I've taken some really thin polystyrene sheet and put in some little blocks, and then used some stretch sprue to simulate the latches, and then I put in that little handle there. So now we're going to go ahead and remove all of that that's molded in wrong. And I didn't remove it before doing the initial scratch building because I wanted to make sure that I got my distancing correct so that it'll look okay. Now there are some little chain sections on either end there that are molded in, and we're just not going to be able to reproduce that. Now if you have access to or have time to wait for some fine photo etch chain, then you could go ahead and add those little chains back in. But for this build, since I got about a 60-day lead time on getting some photo etch that would work, we're just going to bypass that. So after scraping everything off, we just sand it down nice and smooth. And then we're just going to add a little bit of CA glue here. Now you probably also noticed that I reproduced the handle with a piece of bent wire, and that's in the middle of the hatch there. So with a little bit of the medium CA glue, we'll be able to attach another piece of copper wire that's going to substitute in for that pull to unlatch that hatch. So there we go, that's what we have, and that's what we're going to have to go with. So with that done, let's start preparing for paint. So as you can see here, I have taped off the hatches because inside on the edges there, that actually needs to be green. So we're going to have to spray that. So we need to mask up all those openings. And then when it comes to the commander's position here, I'm just going to build up a little tower out of masking tape to protect the interior from overspray. We definitely don't want to be spraying our pale gray interior. So just make sure that you get it up high enough that you've got it protected, so that when you start painting, especially in my case, because I tend to get just a little bit careless sometimes with the airbrush, and we don't want to be spraying down inside there. So we've also masked off for the engine access hatch there, but we do need to go ahead and remove our tracks. So I just have these secured with tape to make it easier to come off, and we just pull those out. And we'll also go ahead and remove our road wheels and our idlers at the same time here. And that's where these poly caps really come in handy here for painting. So we're going to mask over the access for our ramp access back here on the rear of the vehicle, because we need to also spray the edges around that with the green as well. So we'll just get that masked up. And now it's time to go ahead and put the top back on the vehicle. Seems like we've been putting this on and off quite a bit. But the good news is that we are assured that it's going to work and fit. So here we're just going to put a little bit of masking tape on the underside of our engine deck. And we're going to have that mesh up with the masking tape that we've already put around the engine access opening. So I just want to make sure that I don't have my masking tape too long here. We don't want it folding up on us, possibly causing a little gap there that we might get some overspray into the engine bay, and we don't want that since we got all that painted up. So next thing is we're going to go ahead and press our engine deck into place. And it does fit a little snug, but that's okay. That keeps it from falling off while we're painting the vehicle. And then we'll just pull the tape in around that air cleaner and kind of seal that up right there, because that entire area there around the engine access opening, those edges need to be spray painted just like around the hatches. They need to be spray painted the green. And there we go, that looks good. So when it comes to preparation of our small parts, I do like to use these tapered dowels, and that allows us to not have to handle our road wheels and our idlers, and we'll be able to spray our colors on that. And also later on when we do our chipping and stuff, we don't have to really be handling those parts. Here I'm just using some rolled up pieces of standard painter's tape. Hold our hatches in place, and we'll flip them around for painting, and the alligator clips as well. And also I use a cocktail stick or toothpick if you're a hillbilly to hold our commander's cupola. So now I've went ahead and masked up the side skirts. These are rubber side skirts for channeling the water and keeping dust down. So we're going to want those to remain black. Now I'm going to use just a little bit of isopropyl alcohol here and a cotton swab. Kind of wipe down the exterior of the vehicle a little bit here because there are oils on our fingers, you know, and maybe a little bit of sanding dust, which I hopefully have gotten all that cleaned off. But we don't want anything to interfere with the acrylic paints that we're going to be using, because those paints are water-based. So we don't want them pulling up or pulling away from anything. So first up in our color is going to be this Surface Primer Vallejo Black. And it's an acrylic and mixed for the airbrush, of course. And I've painted all those parts that black. Now we have our periscopes, and I think it's just easier, just like we did when we painted the interior, to mask over our periscopes. And when we go and paint our olive drab, that'll protect these and give us that little black shadow look there for our periscopes, make them nice and dark for us. So you just want to make sure that you get the edges of this pressed down really good. Now make sure that you give your primer coat plenty of time to dry before you apply the masking tape. We don't want any issues with the paint adhering to that masking tape. Now we don't want to forget to do the inside. We do need to mask those down too, so we'll just cover those up as well. Now the sizes are different between the inside and the outside, so you're going to have to measure and cut those accordingly. And it's always a good idea to look over and make sure that you got everything masked that needs to be. We don't want to be painting and then all of a sudden see something that we forgot to do. So always check your work. So this is our pale gray craft paint, water-based acrylic, that we're going to be using to spray the inside of the Commander's cupola. So I went ahead and sprayed the inside of the Commander's cupola. That's why we masked off the interior periscopes there. And with that done, we can go ahead and mask this off so that we can do the exterior painting. So the same way that we did before with building up a little overspray guard, whatever you want to call it, with the masking tape, just to kind of protect that pale gray on the interior. And we do use the masking tape as well to block off the hatch opening from the inside. And that's kind of what you get there, because the inside of the ring there where the hatch closes is supposed to be, you guessed it, same color as the exterior. So here we are, the vehicle is primed in the black, and I hope that you don't mind that I didn't show me spraying everything black. I thought that would be rather boring. But what we're going to do here is do some pre-shading, because we've got a lot of flat surfaces. Basically, this armored personnel carrier is one big box. So we need to kind of add a little bit of pre-shading to break up the monotony of these large flat areas. And we're just going to do that pre-shading here in any of these large areas where people could walk and the paint gets scuffed and thinned out, and also a little bit of sun fading maybe, although we are going to paint it rather dark. And don't worry if your airbrush gives a little spit and sputter or anything like that, because it'll just add extra character to our pre-shading. It's not that big of a deal. Don't really get too deep into it. You don't really have to worry about it that much. So when it comes time to making the color, I said this before in a previous video, but just to recap, black and yellow makes olive drab. So these are our craft paints that we're using here, acrylic water base. Now I did protect the top of the vehicle here with a little piece of cardboard while I'm spraying the hatch, the inside of the hatch, that is, because it should be the same color as the exterior. And then we're also going to get around that hatch area. Same thing here on a ramp. And then we can come in after we've cleaned up around all of our hatch areas. And we can start laying in a thin coat of our olive drab. Now you don't want to go heavy on this, you just want to, basically we're just tinting it. And we're just going to keep laying a quick thin coat on it, and then we'll come back and add additional coats and just kind of let the pre-shading develop for us. Now, a lot of times I get a little enthusiastic and I get carried away. The rule of thumb, when you're applying this top coat over your pre-shading, is you need to stop probably right when you think maybe one more coat would be just great, which is, for me, it's usually that one coat that is too heavy. So just be careful and keep an eye on it and make sure that you're not wiping out all that work that you did before with your pre-shading. Now in my hobby area, I do have a dehumidifier, so this water-based acrylic paint actually dries quite quick. So I'm able to keep going around the vehicle and adding those thin layers and let that color develop. Making sure now that we're paying attention and we don't want to get it thick anywhere. That might make our pre-shading kind of fade completely out. So now we've went ahead and sprayed all of our exterior parts to include our side skirts, our hatches, and our commander's cupola. And now we just need to take this masking tape off of the entire model, because we're kind of done with that. Hopefully we're done with that. And I always like peeling off this masking tape. It's kind of that reveal moment, I guess is what I'm looking for there, where you can see the nice contrast. And coincidentally, those side skirts are rubber with the metal end caps, so they should be black. And we're going to remove the rest of the masking tape that's on the rest of the model, and that includes our periscopes. We don't want to forget about that. So we do want to be careful that we don't scratch the paint as we remove these. And yes, I am using a hobby knife to catch the edge, but I'm being as careful as I can. And we'll just get that off of there. So as I'm pulling off all this masking tape, I'm just being really careful and pulling it off slowly, so that I don't run into an issue of maybe peeling the paint off underneath. And I don't think I will. This craft paint tends to be fairly durable, so I would say that Tamiya is probably a much more durable paint than this, but then again, I guess everything is relative. I don't intend to be doing a lot of scratching and scraping on it, so it should be just fine. Now would be a good time for us to go ahead and prepare our artist oil paint here. Now this is burnt umber, and I'm just going to squeeze it out on a piece of cardboard. And as you can see, there's plenty of linseed oil in it. As much as you try to knead and get it to mix inside the tube, which is not really what we need. We just need the pigment. So placing it on the cardboard will wick away most of that as it sits there. But for all that heavy excess there, we're just going to kind of dab that off with a paper towel so that we don't have all of that to deal with. So now we're going to work on our tools. Now this is German dark yellow, which we're going to use for the base color for all of our wooden handles. And I know there are those out there that say that these tools should be painted the same color as the vehicle. However, I just don't think that that's aesthetically pleasing for me. I like to see a little bit of variation and some more details, so we're going to paint our tools as if that's the way the tools were issued, without them being the same color as the vehicle. So we're going to paint all of our handles with the German dark yellow, and then for the metal parts we're going to use the German Panzer gray. It's not quite as stark as black would be, and this is also the Vallejo water-based acrylic that we're using. So all the metal parts for all of our tools, we're going to paint them all up. Now the only tool that I'm actually going to show us working on is going to be the shovel, but it's the same process for all the other tools and the pry bars and stuff. So we just want to make sure that we get a good coat of that Panzer gray on there. And don't forget to paint up your handle as well. Now for those of you that prefer to paint these off the vehicle, that would be your choice. So I'm going to go ahead now and work on the headlights. So we have two headlights that actually look black. Those are our infrared projectors. They emit infrared light, so when you're looking through night vision devices, you can see your surroundings. So those lenses are we're just using the black from our priming of the vehicle, so it is watered down. And I'm going to use that to do our spare tracks as well. That'll give us a base to do our weathering on for our spare tracks. And I'll just put a light coat on that. So next up, we're going to use this flat steel enamel by Testers. And I'm going to use that for our regular driving lights. I just don't want them real real shiny. So we're just going to paint the lenses with that, and then anything that if you don't have to really get it up into the edges too bad, or too much I should say, because the black panel liner that we're going to be using will give us a nice round look. Just get it as close as you can. So here we're making a chipping color for us. We want one that's just a little bit lighter than the olive drab that we have on the vehicle. So I just keep adding a little drop of yellow because olive drab is made up with black and yellow. And that'll lighten it up for us. And we'll just keep checking until we get the color that we want. Now this is going to be sponge chipping, of course. And you just dip your sponge into the paint and then blot most of it off your sponge. You don't want any big globs of paint on your model. And we're just going to catch the edges and some of those flat panels. We'll do just a few spots here and there, just to give a little bit more of that visual interest, which is a word that a lot of modelers like to use. So, and anywhere where you're going to have rock dings and stuff, just go ahead and put you a few chips. Don't forget about your road wheels or your idlers. You just want to make sure that you get some chipping in there. And the process goes really fast. As you can see, it looks pretty good. Now, it's not a great big deviation between our chipping color and the base color. But we're going to go ahead and do that on our ramp. Now, the ramp gets heavily used. So this is going to be the first step for our ramp weathering, is to get our chips on. So there are these ribs that are welded on to the inside of the ramp there. And that's to keep the troops from slipping when they're running up the ramp. And of course they catch a lot of wear. So we will chip those up heavily. And we'll also get into the little areas in between those ribs as well. And we can come back with a fine paintbrush and do a few scratches. It's always good to have some scratches. You don't want to overdo it if you're going for a vehicle that's, say, fairly new to the theater. And I'm kind of envisioning this one as having light scratches. So we'll go ahead and do that on little areas on the vehicle that make sense. Don't put scratches all over it, of course. Now, going back to the ramp, we're going to put some masking tape here in between the ribs. And that's going to protect it from a little bit of dry brushing that we're going to be doing. Because I want to hit those ribs where the paint would be worn off quite a bit with a little bit of dry brushing. Back to the flat steel, tester's enamel for that. And we're just going to dry brush that right onto those ribs. Now, there is another way to do this. You could paint the ramp silver and then put hairspray method, you know, where you spray the hairspray on it and then put your green coat over top of that and then chip it off with water. But I kind of like the control that I get with the dry brushing. And of course, it's going to be shinier in the center of the ramp than it will be out on the edges, because everybody that I've ever seen, when they get ready to jump up on a ramp, they usually go up the middle. And then we did a little bit of chipping there on the edge and in just a little bit in the center between the ribs too, because that paint is going to get worn down. And we don't want to forget the entrance there right on the hull. We will go ahead and put a little bit of chipping there. Kind of gives us a used look, but not abused. So it is kind of challenging here because this is an all aluminum vehicle. So, except for, of course, the engine and other parts that have to be steel. Now on the edge of our ramp, where it hits the ground, we do have these skids that protect the ramp, but in between them, of course, you're still going to make contact with the ground in areas, and there will be a little bit of aluminum exposed there too. Yeah, about like that. Now when it comes around our hatches, I'm just going to lighten the edges up where the troops would be coming in and out of that top hatch. And then for the hatch itself, right on the very edge, we're just going to simulate the exposed aluminum where the edges have been worn through the paint. And we're just going to carry this same theme around the rest of the vehicle. The forward portion of the driver's hatch, of course, where he's going to put his hands and lean forward. That's going to be shinier. And then, of course, the commander's cupola right around the edge of the opening. We're going to catch that as well. And we don't want to forget the edges of the hatches. Now the driver's hatch, it has a real square edge to it. So across the front of it, it would be chipped and worn. And then also on the underside, just lightly catch your edges there. Now we're going to go ahead and do the wear on our tools. And we're just adding the same flat steel enamel. And we're just going to blend it a little bit. You want it kind of thicker down towards the tip. And then we can come in with some enamel thinner and kind of blend and remove anything if that we need to remove if we get it too thick and way too silvery, then we can thin that out really easy. And so, just catching the edges of the handle as well on the shovel. I think that looks pretty decent. That's not too bad. We'll do all the tools like that. So this is Model Master's Silver acrylic. And we're going back to that hatch. Remember now, we put in that new pull latch. So we do need to kind of simulate where the ends of the chain were exposed. But since we didn't put any chain on there, I think this is going to look fine. And then the greatest majority of it is going to be black because that chain that goes from the left side to the right side latch had this vinyl tube that spans the distance. And that's so when you grab a hold of it and you pull it real hard to either unlatch or latch the top hatch, you're not getting your fingers and skin caught into that fine chain there, because that could hurt. You end up with a little blood blister or something there. So anyway, we're just going to paint that up with the black in between. Yeah, just like that. So now it's time to go ahead and touch up the rubber wheels, or I should say the rubber tires on our road wheels. And we're doing that with the same black that we used in our airbrush when we primed everything. And it flows really easy, and it'll kind of wick right around that rim, giving us a nice circular tire. And we don't have to worry about pushing thick paint into that little crack or little edge. So this is Model Master's Rust. Again, it's an acrylic, and I like using acrylics, I do, because the low odor and it's just much easier to use. In this case, we're going to be using this rust to paint our exhaust. So this is just going to be that base coat for the exhaust pipe that sticks up there out of the engine deck. And that's going to give us a base for doing some more rust weathering later on. but we do need to get this on first. And I really like these Model Master paints. It's a shame that they discontinued them. When Rust-Oleum bought Model Masters out, they decided they just weren't going to continue the line, and it was discontinued. You can still find some of those around, but you probably should, if you're like me and you're using these Model Master paints, you need to find another source for the colors that you like. Now, do you remember that artist oil paint, that burnt umber? There it is on our piece of cardboard. So I'm going to be using enamel thinner and a fine brush, and I'm just going to pull down on that right onto the cardboard, and we're just using that enamel thinner to dilute some of that pigment. And the finer that pigment has been diluted, the better your results are going to be. You definitely don't want it clumpy when you go to paint the wooden handles on the tools. And now we're just going to apply that burnt umber right onto the German dark yellow that we used as our base color. And as you can see, it's actually working pretty good. Normally I have to come back in later and kind of come over it by dragging a moistened brush over it to put in some wood graining, but this is actually it's kind of working out for us here, so I don't think we're going to have to do that, and it should dry fairly quick considering the amount of enamel thinner that we've used on it. So with all that done and dry, we can go ahead and start reassembling the vehicle. And as many times as this has been on and off, it's amazing that I haven't broken anything yet. But I guess that's a good testament to Tamiya Extra Thin, huh? And we'll go ahead and stick our engine deck on as well. And it is a tight fit, which is good. That way it won't be falling off when we're trying to clear coat this thing. And our rear ramp, if I press it into place correctly, it'll stay up. So that came out really nice too. And our commander's cupola fits. And there's our fording board that goes on the front that we use for amphibious operations. So that's on. And I will probably not glue that on. I'll just leave it loose so that if I want to show the inside of the engine bay, I'll still be able to do that. So we've come a long way in this video. I am going to kind of have to leave it there because we still got a lot to do, and I mean we still got to gloss clear coat this thing and do our decals and our panel liner, and we haven't even touched the track yet, and we've got weathering to do, and also we've got 5 figures to paint. So I'm hoping we'll be able to get all that done in the next video, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Alright, so we got a lot done in this video, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of my subscribers. It's because of you guys that I keep making these videos, and I hope you enjoyed this one. And if you did, don't forget to press that like button. That really helps me out. And also, if you're new to the channel and you're not a subscriber, I hope maybe today I earned that subscription. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you won't miss the next installment in this series and for many more builds to come. So with that, I hope you guys stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.